Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Mel.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you? Are you ready for this new moon?
Yeah, definitely. It looks really interesting on a little bit of the reading that I've been doing about what can be coming up. So this is episode 37 of our moon series.
Yeah.
And you're going to let us know a little bit about the new moon and how we can utilize that and some of the energies that are going to be around for that time period.
Right. So this is the new moon in Aquarius. And this new moon is on the very first day of February. So February 1st. Now, obviously, any of the moons are slightly different in different parts of the world. So this is why we allow a 3-day window for the new
Mm.
moon. So the day before, the 31st up to the 2nd, you can kind of still use these new moon energies for yourself and use your intentions. It'll be at its most intense moments during the 3-day period of time. So I always like to start with like kind of letting us know what these traits are inside of this zodiac sign that it's falling in. So we're in Aquarius. So we are looking at the traits of being assertive, analytical, original, humanitarian, independent, and easygoing. So
Mm.
when you're thinking of a new moon, in this, you're kind of looking at a recentering of yourself, a chance to reassess your emotions in a calm and collected way.
Mm.
So Aquarius, even though it's called the water bearer, isn't actually an air sign. So we are thinking in logical terms. We're using our thinking mind over our feeling mind. And when I say feeling mind, I mean heart. So any of the air signs are very logical thinkers. They think inside of, uh, analytical ways and not in I feel this way. It's more I
Mm.
see in this way. This is how this presents itself to me. So when we are in that air sign, just remember anytime an air sign comes in, you're looking at logic over emotion.
Mm.
Again, this new moon will bring a recentering to yourself. It's going to be a chance to reassess your emotions in a more thoughtful way. So it's going to be calmer, it's going to be more collected in the way that you think. And a tidbit of information is Venus is left retrograde. So those emotional
Mm.
lessons that we've been learning over the last month, give or take, they are all at the surface now. So it's time for us to act in new patterns. Um,
Mm.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, that's it's a relief because anything in retrograde can be a challenge for a lot of people, can't it?
Yeah, it can. And it's all the way we perceive the retrograde. For me, I like to look at retrogrades of taking a new perspective at the lessons that were being taught. And so this last one, we had a Mercury retrograde coupled with this Venus retrograde. So the things that you still hold on to the past that presented at one point as love to us, it came to the surface. You really had to reevaluate or evaluate maybe for the first time what it was that you were doing and allow yourself the opportunity to really feel those feelings, to really come into an understanding, because this last full moon was in Cancer, which is an emotional thing. And so now we are taking all of that we felt, all of those lessons inside of those feeling realms, and they're all sitting and bubbling at the surface. And now with this new moon and this air sign, we're able to logically reassess the ways that we were feeling about them, logically put into perspective the understanding of why things move forward or why things continue, what was
Mhm.
worthy of our time and our emotional capacity, and what's now time for us to take that analytical self and move forward from the emotional realms that we've been inside of. Um, so again, this is that opportunity to act in a new pattern, take steps in a different way. We talk about cycle breaking, and
Mm.
part of that cycle breaking is being aware of the cycles that you're in. And this new moon really kind of gives you the opportunity to not be so emotionally drawn to the cycle and start to really say, is the cycle healthy for me? And in
Mm.
what ways is it and is not healthy for me? And so this new moon's intentions are really going to be focused around those arenas.
So breath of fresh air to a lot of people.
Yeah, especially, for those of us who are very uncomfortable inside of the emotional realms. I had a little slip up inside of this retrograde season myself. I found myself being really emotional over some friendships that I had lost. And the realization that I still had this deep love for them, and how I never wanted it to pan out this way. And that hurt me, knowing that I still had this love that my logical mind could not overtake, this emotional realm. And just to be confident and comfortable enough to sit in those feelings and realize that the past is the past for purpose. And now that we're walking in, and you can really feel as the Venus part of it starts to go back into its normalcy, that these feelings are there, but that doesn't mean that we have to act on them. Those feelings are there to teach us that the depth of love. But now that we're entering into this air sign, we're also starting to see why we had to walk away, or why we had to adjust the pattern. And so this breath of fresh air is coming in a very big way, because it is hard sometimes to be emotionally attached to things and realize that you are emotionally attached, but not finding the way to detach. And now with this air sign coming in, it's kind of saying, hey, by the way, here's your logical thought patterns back, so that you can take care of the reasons why. Now you're accepting that you love and you love deeply, and the magic of love. But now it's to accept the reasons why we learn these lessons and move forward in a new way, instead of being stuck in the old transitionary wheel that just takes you to the same place over and over and over. So this is a really, if we go rewind back to the beginning of the year, where we had that new moon in Capricorn, right? And it was like, let's plan out our whole year. This is all business. This is this, this is this, right? And then even in this full moon that we just had, it was still kind of looking at relationships, but it was also the relationships inside of business. Now we're starting to take a step in a new direction. Now we're starting to evaluate our relationships in different patterns, who we establish as friends, who we establish as significant others, why it is that these things are working, why they're not. And we're able to take this deeper breath and say, oh, well, that makes sense now. The reason why this isn't working. Now I can grasp this logically, that we need to move forward, or we need to make some adjustments, so that this new pattern, even if we decide to include these people in the new pattern, the boundaries are different, the system's different, we are valuing ourselves differently. Therefore, the value system in general inside of the relationship has to change. So Saturn rules Aquarius. And so some of the questions that you need to ask yourself during this new moon is, what structures in my life are working? And then at the same other side of the, we like to talk about polarity, at this other side of that coin, what structures in my life are not working? And we can take this back to the Hierophant card that we've talked about in our Major Arcana series, where we talk about tradition and the roles of tradition and what works inside of those structures, and what maybe needs a little bit more discernment. So I definitely recommend going and taking a look at that as well. Am I spending my time usefully? Is a question that you can ask, because I think a lot of us have learned through these retrogrades that maybe we were sitting there pondering our past too much and living in nostalgia, as opposed to living in the now or planning for the future. What rules should I integrate from this past month's lessons is another great question to ask yourself. So we've kind of learned a lot about ourselves, the way we love, the way we see the world, the way we integrate our feelings. And now that we're in a deeper breath, a fresh breath, we can say, what part of those lessons would I like to integrate? And for me, my personal lessons are, it's okay to be vulnerable and love deeply, because everything has an expiration date at some point, and so, and I don't mean that in like some scary, fearful way. I just mean that, we come here to live and then die. And so at some point, this experience is expired. And so to live in that fear of vulnerability, or that fear of opening yourself up enough to others, it's it's not doing you any good. So instead, I'm learning that I love deeply. It's who I am. And lessons come and lessons go. And because of these lessons, I'm wiser for it. And yes, I still hold love for everybody I've come into contact with, even if we don't talk anymore, even if it ended on bad terms, I still get to love that person. Nobody gets to tell me otherwise. But now the love is shaped differently. The love is shaped with a different distance, a different boundary line, a different value system. And so for me, that was really this massive lesson that I got to learn through the retrograde. And as the retrograde ended and we come into this new moon, I am now starting to logically understand the need for vulnerability, the need for caring, the need for love in my life.
Because the other aspect of the Aquarius energy around that free thinking, rebellious is the unconventional. So you've got to have arrived at a place, haven't you, to sort of dug in deep and see what patterns are playing out and what are old patterns or situations or relationships that you need to let go of, so that you're able to do that. So you go more into that free thinking, creating those new rules for yourself and doing things that may seem unconventional that you wouldn't have done before, but you're feeling inspired, because Aquarians tend to be more innovative of the star signs. So it can often be like the inventors come up with very new, novel ideas, which is difficult if you're going to stick within a structure that isn't one that fits anymore.
Right. So Aquarians are known to not fit the mold. They're what we would consider the outcast, I guess is the way to put it, because they think differently. I'm an Aquarian moon. So I grasp the concept, I'm a double air sign. I'm an air sun and an air moon, and my air moon just happens to be in Aquarius. And that, I always kind of tease and I'm like, I'm different than you. And that's just this natural proclivity we have as the Aquarians, is to feel different, to feel, in its darker spaces, shunned or outcasted. But when you're primed and you've healed those spaces, you've realized that you might not belong in every group, but that's because you are different. And that difference is what brings you into making changes, to being this fiercely independent, change maker that not every sign has the qualities to have. And so it's actually this beautiful blessing in its disguise when it comes to Aquarius. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it can be quite difficult, can't it, for a lot of people. We've talked in our private conversations about if you feel a bit weird or you grow up and you're a bit different from people, how do you embrace that weirdness? How do you so-called weirdness, because it's only weird because you don't sit within that setting, that cultural group that maybe you've grown up in, and that can be quite difficult, can't it, to recognize that, accept that, and go, what are my quirks, what are the things I'm interested in, can be the things that actually are the ones that light you up and can even create an income out of.
Right. That's exactly it. That's the beauty of being a way shower as an Aquarius. You're a natural kind of leader in the sense that you don't want to lead at all, but you just happen to be the leader of the weirdos. And we love weirdos around here. I call my whole family the House of Weirdos, because we don't make fun of differences. We incorporate them, and embrace everything that you're meant to be in this. And that if you're meant to be weird, then go be your weirdest self. And that's just, one of the most beautiful aspects of this Aquarian. And, you and I have talked about this before, where if it just depends on if you believe in this, and if not, just kind of ignore what I'm saying for the next few seconds. And, we're leaving this Piscean energy, and inside of this Piscean energy, it's very same. Everything needs to be the same. There are outcasts. You need to fit the mold, and we're entering, and I'm sure everybody's heard the song, The Age of Aquarius. And inside of this Age of Aquarius is where we start to really find our uniqueness, our specialness, to be the thing that leads the way, as opposed to the thing that has to be shoved down for the cookie cutter version of who we are supposed to be. And so now that we're entering this new moon in Aquarius, we're entering a space now where it says, who are you, uniquely you? What is it about you that's unique? What is it about you that deserves to shine a weird little light on? Because we deserve that. We deserve for this uniqueness that is each individual person to stand out, because that's what really creates a new society. That's what creates a new collective. That's what creates a new family structure. And it's really beautiful when you zoom it out and look at the bigger picture of it all.
And it sounds as though, as in the past, as part of the Piscean age, as you've explored, is we had to do that individually. We'd have to break away individually and go off into the mountains, or as we've talked in the tarot deck, found a system that we can align with that sort of better fits our ideals and ideas, but that can be quite far removed from the family that we've grown up in. But this gives me a sense of, there can be a lot of quirky people now that are coming out and embracing their quirkiness, which means it's an opportunity for those quirky people to come together through that shared understanding of difference and uniqueness, but whilst being able to come together as a group
but
and
still
a community.
So one of the things that comes to mind is like the beautiful community that's come from the LGBTQ or the non-binary groups, the people who have collectively joined hands and saying, in my uniqueness and my not same as everybody else, I still am finding this collective group of human beings that can understand to a certain level that others might not be able to, because they're still inside of this cookie cutter example of what a human life is supposed to look like. And so the more we step into this Aquarius age, the more we're really going to see this as this is how this is breaking off. And it's beautiful. I'm in love with watching the uniquely you people coming through and then joining hands and saying, we're still here for the collective group. We're just doing it in the way that I choose to do it. It doesn't have to be traditional. This is, again, we'll go back to the Hierophant card. We're creating new age understanding of tradition, and it's beautiful. It really is.
Yeah. And it being more about transitions are normal and continuums are normal, rather than this polarized way of looking at the world that we've had. Is actually, whether we're talking about gender being fluid or we're talking about identity, because we've talked about in the past as well, haven't we, that identity doesn't have to be fixed. And where did that come from anyway? Where did those rules about and ideas about who we are, how was that formed? And for some people, they've had to do that search for a long time because they just didn't connect or fit in with that culture system, way of viewing the world. And for other people, it's now becoming more noticeable. And like you see, we're seeing these different groups appear, but that aren't saying it's this or it's that. It's about, well, we're all sort of fluidly operating around each other.
And isn't that just something to behold? I mean, this is the start of society changing. This is the start of evolving as a community, as a society, as a collective whole. The more people that are stepping out and saying, this is who I am, and although I'm not going to need to be a loner about it, I can still join hands with others, but we're doing our thing the way we do it. We're just doing it in a collective way. You're going to start really seeing these massive shifts in society, and the judgmental type experiences that we've had maybe growing up seem to dissipate for our children or the next generation. And you can really see this happening. We can even take this to the kids that are like, let's say ADHD or on the spectrum of some sort. They've always been treated differently. They've been treated like more of a sore or not normal, but there's so much normalcy inside of these different environments these different types of children that we're starting to begin to see that now. And they just look at the world differently. They collect information differently. They express it differently. And there's nothing wrong with that. We just have to teach differently, love differently, understand differently now in a different way than what we're used to doing in the way that we grew up. And so it's although it's a challenge in a lot of communities, and that's fine, because evolving is chaotic and challenging.
Yeah.
We are still learning to be more accepting, more understanding, more thoughtful towards people that don't think like us, don't act like this, don't fit this cookie cutter mold that we have been presented for, generations up till now. And so, but back to the new moon in Aquarius, it's just kind of a taste, an example, like a little taste of what's to come in the evolving society that is the world, is this a moment of logically thinking, well, this person's different than I am, but that doesn't harm me. That's just how they express themselves, how they live their life. So I don't really have judgment on that. And it's really kind of going to be this comfy zone that everybody can kind of experience each other for who they are and not have a lot of judgment or opinion on it.
Yeah. And it's fascinating looking at that. Like you say, the different ages and stages, in terms of if people are in their 60s and 50s, they're a very different experience of society than those in their 20s and 30s, and those in the 50s and 60s would have started to sow the seed and carve the way for others like us to have moved in that direction. And I've certainly seen in the education system is really young people who are, if we use terminology like neurodivergent, neurologically different from neurotypical. It's really just challenging the system to think about what are the things that we expect children to do to adhere and conform into a structure that actually is outdated and causes more health issues than anything oftentimes.
Yeah, guys, we live in an exciting time. If you just shift your perspective slightly, you are literally living in a profound moment of evolution, and it's there's going to be stories in the history books about this moment in time. And it's going to be wild when you pass on to your next journey and you're like, whoa, I was part of this really huge shift in the way people think and the way people act and the way we teach others and the way we correct, it's wild when you shift that perspective. But the time, and that all comes down to, we are in an age of technology now. We are in that revolutionary moment of technology, and technology has really created this shift for human beings to see things differently, to own things differently, to understand things differently. And so this age of Aquarius, this new moon in Aquarius, is kind of like that snapshot of how things are kind of evolving to be. And something I would definitely recommend during this new moon phase is to pull up your natal chart. And if you don't know what that is, you can go to, I think it's called Astro Cafe or Astrology, or you can literally type in a search engine, what is my birth chart? And you just fill out basic information. You will need your time of birth if you're going to want any specifics, like your moon, your rising, your Lilith, things like that. But what I would like for you to do is get into one of those, put in your specific information, and then find Aquarius in your chart. And during this new moon, you're going to once you see where the Aquarius is in your chart, then look up the information for it. Allow yourself to know a little bit more about yourself and notice the shift that happens inside of that aspect of your being, of who you are, because, astrology is probably one of the oldest forms of psychology that there is. And it kind of gets you to know yourself in a deeper level. And then once you see where that Aquarius is in your chart, you can kind of note it and then watch the transformation over the next month happen for yourself. It's really a wild experience when you kind of put yourself in charge of how things look. It's almost like you get to see into the future in a way, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, it certainly feels like that we're at that point in that transition, whether that's a few months or a year, but that place of more and more people identifying what are the things that I do that I'm quiet about, because it could, it could get somebody saying, oh, I'm not sure about that, or being dismissive towards that. So how can we set an intention to increase our strength and courage to become more of those, the way we dress or the way that we interact, or the hobbies that we choose to take.
The hobbies that we choose, right? Because there's no wrong way. And that's the beauty of this human experience, is everything is meant to be the way you choose it to be. So inside of your intention, again, I'm never going to tell you how to do your practice because it's your personal practice. But I will recommend that fire is air. So if you put whatever it is that you're intending on a piece of paper, on a bay leaf, it doesn't really matter how you choose to do it. Write down what it is that you would like to see yourself be more yourself about. Like Mel said, interacting with people, the way you dress, the way you design your house, the way you create art, the way you walk into work, the way you listen to music. Maybe you're afraid to change the station because everybody in your household listens to this one station. Well, maybe it's time that you turn on a different station, and who cares what they think? They don't have to like it for the 20 minutes that they're driving with you, and so it's just whatever it is that you want to see yourself be more like or become more of for yourself. Just make that the intention, put it in some fire, and let the magic do its work.
Yeah. And even think, because Aquarius is around the technology issue, as you say, and we've seen a wealth of apps grow over the last few years around all sorts of different things. How can you tune into yourself, in those still moments, and think about what emerging new thing are you working on that you can bring to the forefront that is for the benefit of other people? Right. And as we've discussed, there are lots of artists out there, photographers, and we're certainly seeing a more of a blending of bringing through the arts into practice like meditation and mindfulness, because we know that that's a way of connecting with your own inspiration, spirituality, connecting with your own gifts. And that's a way of bringing that through. So it might just be a little fleeting idea that you've had that's been sat in the background for a while, but allow this new energy that's coming through with the Aquarius aspect of it to open that up and immerse yourself in that and see, because sometimes we can place our mental biases on what we think is possible.
Yeah.
But actually, if we let go all ideas and not even focus on anything we're doing, let's see what emerges when you have those moments of stillness.
Right. When you're not judging your thought pattern or your creative ability, what is it that you can do? It doesn't have to be something massive. It can be something as small as I decided to put polka dots on today,
Yeah.
And so it's like all quite possible. And one step at a time. You don't have to take on the whole staircase. You can just take the step. And that step leads you closer to the direction you were meant to be in the first place. And if that step ends up falling through, recognize that is not your path and move into another step. That's the beauty of what the Aquarius, the new moon in Aquarius is going to give you, is a fresh understanding of what it is you're capable of in your creative world. And again, the creative world doesn't have to be art at all. It doesn't have to be painting, photography, talking. It could be the way you parent your child. It could be the way you create a dish. It could be that one day you just decide to put down the directions and create the dish from your understanding of it and what sounds good to you. There's so many ways for us to walk into our creative spirit, and not one way is better than the other. It's all here for you to create, experience, become the curious person, understand that this world is open for your interpretation of it, and just dive in.
Yeah. And it also reminds me of the ages and stages of if you get to teenage years. The teenage years is often where you start to develop your own identity around what you like and don't like in the music and the way that you dress. It's also really challenging time for parents, because whatever rules and ideas they have about the children, all of this can come into the forefront and can be contested, or rebellious teenagers, all of these themes and patterns they start to emerge. So for a lot of people who've got children, it's an opportune time to review, how have you been running your ship and organizing the house, and what expectations do you have of people, and then where are they now? Can someone take more leadership within the house? Can you share out the responsibility? What new and novel ways can you share time with the family or with the wider community? What things can you do differently together so that your children can start to embrace their own quirks? They're not necessarily going to excel at this thing that you thought you'd like to see one of the children excel at, but what is it that they innately bring to the table? And it doesn't mean to say that's going to be their career, but it just
Right.
allows that to
Not everything
transpire.
has to be centered around a career.
Yeah.
Sometimes the growth of self is the preparation for the career that they'll choose later on in life. And yeah. So I do have a child on the spectrum, and I will tell you, he brings in a level of love and understanding that I wish more people had. And to watch this child blossom and grow and be the person that he's meant to be has been probably one of the greatest joys in my life, going from a little bit more of we have to be the same, we have to do things the same way, and to this world now where we exist, where we call it neurodivergence, and we allow them to express themselves freely, and we give them a set of tools that work for them instead of that works for, you know, these other types of people. It's a game changer, and we can really take note of these children who have had to live these existences and really fight the system and watch them grow, and take that as advice for the way we challenge ourselves and even day-to-day parenting of children that we consider in the normal zone, you know. And so this is just a very interesting new moon to take a really deep, you know, a deep look and a new perspective on the way we're living life and the way we're allowing ourselves the freedom of being ourselves, and how we're allowing others to be themselves, and really take that into account. And it's really an interesting new moon. I'm very excited about this one.
Yeah, me too. It's got a very different feeling, this one, from the other ones that we've done in the past.
Yeah.
And I don't know if for me, because, you know, as you know, I like the new year, and it has that flavor of we're heading towards the spring and we're already starting to see lighter days. But it's interesting to see that in the context of groups and communities, because I'm certainly starting to see an emergence of new communities being formed around new ideals and ideas that don't sit in the old structure or the ways of doing things. So we are seeing the very early signs, I think, of some unique changes that are taking place.
And we're lucky enough to be witness to it. So, you know, it's kind of an honor, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I don't have a whole lot else on the new moon, but I will say that if you do, obviously, but I do have a quick tarot spread to hand out once you finished what you have, because I know that you had collected some information as well.
Well, no, just really that, Danielle. I'm excited to see what the tarot spread's going to yield.
Oh, perfect. Well,
moon. Yeah.
So again, you know, it's setting our attentions, use the flame. It helps with these air signs. You know, you're going to focus in relationships and finances is going to be, you know, especially if you had a large new moon intention at the beginning of the year for Capricorn, and we talked plan for your year, a lot of this is going to be incorporating that further. Like, how can I be unique in my field? How do I stand out in my field? So this is a 3-card spread, right? And so the questions for the cards are going to go, the first question is, where can I experiment more? What quirks am I hiding? And how can I be more empathetic? So those are going to be your 3 cards that you pull, the 3 questions that you ask, and it allows you kind of see where you are in this transitionary time, moving from this energy of self into more of a collective energy, and seeing like how you're in. No harshness is required for yourself. I know tarot can feel harsh, but it's really not meant to be. It's just kind of allowing you to see the direction that you're taking. But yeah, for those 3 cards, just ask yourself those questions, pull the card, see how they come out, and let yourself go from there.
So in true fashion, which one would apply to you in terms of where you'd start to set your intention?
I would say, what quirks am I hiding? I was raised in a very cookie cutter experience. You know, we always worried about our public face and how we appeared in front of other people. And so I had a very conditioned experience of hiding who I truly am, or having a bite back if I was myself. And so for me, I'm really learning to express my individuality, the uniqueness that is me, and being okay with who that is, and learning to love that version of me, the person I came here to be. And so that for me is going to be my big one. What about you, Mel?
It was just interesting getting that idea that you said of the cookie cutter, you know, that it's a mold, isn't it? A mold
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we've
The nuclear
existed in.
household, the same houses in the neighborhood that you can't differentiate. It's always been the same, same, same. And you've got to be the same type of cars, same type of, experiences, same schools, same college, same, all of it's the same.
Wow. Yeah. So now it's how do you bring your individuality into that
Yeah. Yeah.
through any of those
Maybe paint your house teal.
experiments?
Yeah.
Because when you said about the experiments, and I've not had this thought for a long time actually, but I used to listen to a lot of Bowie when I was about 14, 15. And I collected, I think, about 17 of his albums at the time, that which I would have still had. And I remember playing each album and experiencing how different everything was, the structure of the music, the flow, the sound, his look. And so when you say about how can I experiment more, if anyone epitomizes experimenting with all of those, with the trends, with the changes in sound, would be somebody like Bowie. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know who's as brave as Bowie, because he's up there in terms of that level of experimentation.
Man, I to this day, one of my favorite movies in the world has him as the main actor. And so I'm just in love with anybody that can bring their sense of self to the forefront and then cash out on it and live this experience that most of us are too afraid to live. So yeah, that's
so out
really
there.
cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm going to ponder on how or what quirks am I hiding, and what can I bring through? Yeah.
What can you bring through?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if any of you have anything that you would like to bring forward, obviously we're always here to listen. Would love to get more information. You can either comment under this YouTube, or you can join us at Mel and Danielle on Facebook and start a question if you would like, or ask the question. And also like and subscribe to our YouTube page. We're trying to grow our community, and every single subscription and like helps, and share our page.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.